Welcome. Thank you for being here. If you wouldn't mind giving us a like, and consider going ahead and subscribing as well, that would be fantastic. And if you really want to go the extra mile, go down to the description below and click the Patreon link. Lots of cool stuff going on there. As always, I love you, and enjoy the show, guys.
The DeathWorlders, a story by user Hambone. Chapter 22, Warhorse, the 5th year, Part 1. Date point, 9 years and 3 days after Vancouver. London, England, Earth. Sean Harvey. First contact day had come and gone without much in the way of incidents for Sean. He'd had quite a lonely Christmas and New Year's, too. The former had been spent playing EVE Online. The latter was forgotten. He'd woken up in Ava's bed at her place, with Charlotte and Ben in the other room. A Homerian hangover, no clear memory of anything after about 6 p.m. the preceding year, and no Ava. There was Ava now, though, dusting snow off the shoulders of the expensive blended wool coat that Adam had splashed on for her during his first winter visit, as Sean let her in. She gave him a warm grin.
"Hey, lover."
Sean managed the first genuine smile he'd been able to produce in a couple of weeks.
"You better stop calling me that, he replied. "We don't want you to accidentally use it around Adam."
If the suggestion put a dent in Ava's mood, she didn't show it. Instead, to his surprise, she kissed him with a smile and brushed past him into the living room.
"Well, I'll keep using it as long as it's true,"
she asserted, lightly.
"How long is it going to be true for?" Sean asked.
"Oh, come on. You're going to lay the heavy stuff on me right after I get back?"
Ava teased.
"Come on. How was your New Year?"
I woke up in your bed with a splitting headache."
"Not for the first time."
"Yeah, but you weren't there and I wasn't naked,"
she tutted.
"See, I know what you're doing wrong there. You should have picked somebody up, had a good time."
"In your bed?"
"Sure,"
she nodded, casting herself down on the couch and tugging her scarf out of her collar.
"Just change the sheets,
Let me guess, you got laid on New Year's?"
"Oh, yeah."
She nodded and her eyebrows emphasized the point.
"He's very physical, He likes to roughhouse and hug and tickle and—"
"Fuck your brains out?" Sean asked in his best dry tone.
"You said it, not me."
She sat forward, concerned.
I'm sorry. Are you okay?"
Sean sighed.
"Look, I love you. You know that. I've said it before. Seeing you so happy with somebody else is—"
Her expression fell, and so did her gaze, so that she was looking at the carpet.
"It makes me really happy,"
Sean finished. Ava frowned at him.
"That's not how I expected that sentence to go,"
she admitted. Sean shifted seats and sat next to her.
"I think if anybody's going to get how that feels, it's you, though," he said. "Being both really happy for somebody, but also hurting at the same time because you know their happiness is coming at the expense of your own."
She nodded, eyes downcast again. He stood to make her a cup of tea and was nearly to the door when she spoke again.
"You know I love you too, right?"
He hadn't been expecting that at all, and just turned to give her the very reference image of a bewildered stare.
"I mean it,"
she added. Having unbuttoned her coat, she left it behind as she stood up and slipped her arms around his waist.
"I love you, Sean. I owe you everything. How could I not?"
Sean blinked a bit as that sank in, and then wrapped her up in his own arms and held on, fighting back tears. Sure enough, Ava had turned on her own waterworks, but this time it was a kind of happy cry, not the misery he was so used to seeing.
I guess I've got a thing for selfless guys, she said.
I'm not selfless, Sean disagreed, shaking his head against the side of hers. I still wish you'd choose me.
But you're going to let it happen.
Yeah. Sean didn't even hesitate on that one. If it's what you want. She sighed and kissed him gently on the cheek.
Lover, in some ways you're more of a man than he'll ever be.
Sean let her go, not knowing how to respond to that.
Cup of tea.
She laughed.
Okay, fine. Be all British, she teased. I just want you to know that I'm sorry. I know this is cruel on you.
C'est la vie. He shook his head, forgiving her. We're not calling it off just yet, though, are we? There's still a little while.
I think we're past the point where I need somebody to carry me now,
Ava said, and his heart sank a little.
So, let's just enjoy each other, okay? No more drama, no more heavy stuff. Just love. Can we do that?
Nothing would make me happier.
They kissed again, a deep and affectionate one that was a marked contrast to the unregulated release valve for pent-up emotions that had been their relationship so far, and left them both smiling. He felt warm and alive.
So,
Ava said.
Cup of tea?
Date point. 9 years, 2 months, and 1 week after Vancouver. San Diego National Memorial, San Diego County, Southern California, USA, Earth. Gabriel Aries. The part Gabriel had trouble with was how clean the destruction had been. A nuke the same size as the antimatter blast that had destroyed his home, his friends, and his life would have thrust a spear of radioactive fallout deep into the heart of the USA, maybe even as far as Denver. Certainly nobody would have been able to visit the Grand Canyon or Las Vegas again for centuries. While the antimatter had created some very strange ionization effects at Ground Zero, these had faded inside minutes. It had, in its way, been a very clean wound. Buildings had been smashed apart, flattened, or just plain vaporized. The crater had filled with seawater, creating a plume of steam that had been visible from space, and which had altered the local weather. The wildfires had burned for months. The whole city had been written off. There were only some 1,600 survivors or so, most of whom had moved on and tried to keep on living. They had lost a few, a cancer patient who'd been out of town visiting a specialist in Los Angeles, several suicides, and a young married couple who died somewhere up in Mount Everest a year after the blast. But most of them were now established and getting on with the business of just being alive, and with new cities now being built on planets other than Earth, well, resettling San Diego would have just felt like walking on people's graves. Nature, naturally, had no such qualms, and in 5 years the debris field had overgrown with hardy shrubs like creosote bush and manzanita, plus ferns and grasses. A few young trees had even found a home among the rubble. But by and large, the ruins of San Diego belonged to wildflowers and delicate flowering bushes, the perfume of which was carried up the hillside by clean sea air. It was beautiful. The memorial planning had taken 5 years and was intended to involve every one of the survivors, or somebody on their behalf. The idea was simple. An eternal flame had been set up, an elegant silver teardrop with holes around its equator that, when lit, should send flames flowing up and around the metal to lick off the top. It was mounted atop a 5-foot pole on a hillside overlooking the downtown crater. The participants had all been asked to find a flat stone from wherever they had gone on to live, preferably as heavy as they could comfortably lift, and send it to the artist for preparation. Adam's slab of Cimbrian green slate with its lone alien fossil had caused quite a stir. He'd taken some of his precious leave time in order to deliver it, on the grounds that the artist might not believe that anyone could comfortably lift it, and Gabriel would have paid good money to see the look on the guy's face when his boy walked in cradling an enormous chunk of alien geology in his arms. That Cimbrian fossil now took pride of place. The artist had carved a groove to fit half the flame's supporting pole, and Adam's contribution now sat at the heart of the tribute, peeking out of the top with the little spidery, whiskery thing that had once died in those ancient layers of extraterrestrial silt, just peeking out of the top. Everybody's stone was visible, though, even the very smallest one, a tiny palm-sized thing contributed by a little boy who had been just 3 months old at the time of the blast, visiting his grandparents in New Hampshire. It was amazing hearing what some of them had got up to over 5 years. Moving off-world and joining the military seemed to be almost tame next to some of the stuff a few of the others had got up to. A beat cop that Gabriel had never met but shared SDPD history with had gone into the FBI and had talked down a hostage situation in Mississippi. There was a man from Linda Vista who'd become a monk, and a doctor from Alvarado for whom this was the first time setting foot on American soil since the tragedy. For Gabe's part, standing up for a long while was finally becoming less of a challenge. 5 years of exercise and physiotherapy hadn't repaired the nerve damage in his leg, but the muscles were stronger and steadier. His arms had strengthened to cope with resting his weight on his stick, and he no longer shook when standing upright for any length of time. It still hurt a bit, and it always would, but he was spared the indignity of needing to sit down when so many others were standing respectfully. There wasn't a ceremony, exactly. They just circled the memorial, touching it, examining it, finding their stone, and then, watched by the news cameras, the little boy stepped forward with a lit taper on the end of a pole and touched it to the teardrop at the top. It lit, flared, flickered, stabilized, and they watched the heat brown the metal. Then in ones, twos, and threes, they turned away and left behind, having finally said goodbye. John Baseball Burgess. Okay, it's a fucking sauna in here. Warhorse had always struggled with the heat. He was just so big nowadays and so dense that he actively struggled if the temperature crept above 70 or so. Hell, all of the operators were like that. But Adam had it worst. A busy restaurant in LA during a heat wave was really not his environment at all.
If you need to step outside to cool down a minute, it's okay, grill steak,
Ava told him. John nodded his agreement, out of equal parts concern for his friend's comfort and seeing an opportunity to have a private word with Ava. He'd been suspicious from the moment her forgiveness email came in after the move to Folktha. Even sitting down the deck of a C5, he'd been able to hear her shouting, and it had been far from the first such instance. It seemed like every letter or contact between Adam and his girl had gone tense or angry at some point, even when she'd sent him an envelope full of pictures of herself in pin-up poses wearing some of his old t-shirts. An event that Adam had been forced to endure with much whooping, whistling, and good-natured teasing. And then, suddenly, all was forgiven, and there hadn't been a single angry word since, not so much as a bitter comment or a terse email. John was certain he knew what that meant. Been there, done that, with 2 or 3 different girls in his life. The problem was he had no proof, which was why he'd been planning to talk to her very carefully and gently, without going as far as an actual confrontation. Deep inside, he was a long way shy of impressed with her, even if he wasn't quite ready to commit to angry just yet. But he had no proof. Adam nodded and gratefully excused himself to get some cool air, leaving Ava sipping at her mojito opposite John. "So," he said, the moment his friend had awkwardly shouldered his way past the astonished diners and out of earshot. "Things are going way better with you two." She nodded happily around her drinking straw, but didn't comment. That hadn't gone as he'd planned. "I'm glad. You know, he was off his game for a while, after the move to Folktha."
Yeah,
she agreed.
I wasn't exactly fair on him.
That hadn't gone as planned either. Fuck it, direct approach it was.
"Look, Ava, call me paranoid, but when things go from that bad to that good overnight, it makes me suspicious."
Are you a naturally suspicious person?
She asked, helping herself to a breadstick.
"If something seems too good to be true,"
John replied, keeping eye contact. She stopped chewing and frowned at him as she swallowed.
What are you driving at, Baseball? Don't dance around, put it out there.
"Have you found somebody else?"
She did something wholly unexpected and giggled.
Are you out of your... Where would I find somebody to replace Adam?
"Well, speaking from experience here, but maybe anybody who's there might have been better for you, for a bit, just to tide you over."
Am I near the mark there? The couple of rapid blinks she managed and her slightly too neutral expression told him that he was.
Yeah? Speaking from experience, are you?
"Yeah."
So you've cheated on your girls?
She stated.
"Once or twice," he agreed.
Why?
"Young, dumb, and horny, what's your excuse?"
I haven't done anything to excuse,
she replied. John saw right through that one. It may have had the words of a denial, but he knew an evasion when he heard it. What, you think it's okay?
Yeah, actually, I do.
Things went off script for John for the third time.
Look, you said it yourself. He was off his game without me,
Ava told him.
Well, he's still got me. And yeah, okay? It's because I found somebody to tide me the fuck over. You want to talk about what's okay? Is it okay to yank somebody around by their heart for 4 years? Is it okay for you to shove your nose in and suggest that my whole life should be about Adam?
She leaned forward, and the only other person that John had ever seen wear a steel glare like that was Major Powell.
Especially when you've done it yourself? Fuck you. I don't owe you or Adam a goddamn apology.
A nearby diner cleared his throat and looked away, and she lowered her voice again.
Maybe you should stop thinking of me as Adam's girl, or the thing that keeps him going,
she added, allowing the word thing to freeze solid with contempt as she said it.
I'm Ava. I'm not his, I'm mine. And if I do whatever it takes to back him up and help him, it's because I want to. You understand?
And I'm not just some meathead grunt, John shot back. I'm his brother, okay? I'm looking out for him. I'm not going to let anybody hurt him.
You and me both,
she retorted, then sat back and picked up her mojito.
We done?
John paused, then nodded slowly and extended a hand over the table. It'd hurt him if we weren't friends, he pointed out.
Yeah, it would.
She sipped her drink, not returning the gesture.
You proposing a truce?
Are we cool?
We're not cool, no,
she replied, but leaned over and shook his hand.
But you said it. I'm not going to let anybody hurt him.
Good enough. By the time Adam returned with a waiter bearing a pedestal fan, he was delighted to find them getting along like old friends. Date point, 9 years, 2 months, and 2 weeks after Vancouver. HMS Sharman, Folktha, Cimbrian, The Far Reaches. James Legsy Jones.
Fair play, boys, I'm impressed, but for the love of fuck, why and how?
Come on, Legs, both our protectors are away. We wanted to surprise them, Stevenson told him.
With this?
Hell yeah, they put those stupid fucking feet of theirs on everything. It's our turn to leave our mark.
So the 4 of you painted a castle on our water tower?
Legsy put a hand to his brow to shade his eyes and get a better look at it. Only fair, Sykes drawled. They put little feet on everything, we'd put a frickin' huge castle on one thing.
Quality over quantity,
Vandenberg nodded. That the motto of your life, Reba? Price asked and accepted a high five from Murray.
What can I say? Your sister's the best.
Oh, you fucking didn't. Rebar tried to scoot away and hide behind Titan as Price made a friendly grab for him. But aggressors were, by training and vocation, so much faster and nimbler on their feet than defenders. There was pretty soon a good-natured brotherly scuffle in the dirt, with Price grinding his fist painfully against Rebar's head and both men laughing.
Okay, you lot are way too full of beans,
Legsy commented, bringing the rough play to an immediate halt.
Tell you what, if you're all so eager to prove that you can climb as well as our PJs do, there's a load of windows on the main office building. They've never been washed. I reckon the Major'll be fucking impressed if they're all nice and sparkling clean at the end of day. And he might give Admiral Knight the nod for letting that castle you put on his water tower stay there.
Aw, Legs.
What? I'm just making a suggestion.
Legs folded his arms and grinned.
Because otherwise you're going to have to go back up there anyway and strip that nice castle you worked so hard to paint right off again, aren't you?
The defenders exchanged glances. We'll go get the climbing gear, Vandenberg said.
Fuck aye,
Legsy nodded.
Have fun.
He let them get on with it, and made a mental note to get the drone footage that Sykes had definitely taken, even if he'd deny it at first. It'd put the Major in a good mood to watch it, he knew.
And won't Adam and Baseball have a surprise when they get back?
He asked of nobody, turning back to admire the impromptu mural once again. Considering it had been done in the dead of night by 4 men in climbing gear 50 feet in the air, it was remarkably good. They must have been sneaking up there for days penciling in the outline. Adam and Baseball, meanwhile, would be back from leave in 2 days. He gave it 3 days before there were feet somewhere on that castle. Date point. 9 years, 2 months, 2 weeks, and 2 days after Vancouver. London, England, Earth. Sean Harvey.
Hey!
Hey, I saw you on the news. That's quite a memorial they built.
Yeah.
Sean smiled as Ava hung her coat up and kissed him, then frowned at the door. No Charlotte or Ben?
Tonight's not really appropriate for them.
Her tone of voice finally got through to him, and Sean sighed. You're calling it off, aren't you?
You always knew I was going to sometime soon.
Always kind of hoped you wouldn't, he replied, but his heart wasn't in it. He'd known there was no changing her mind.
Come to bed,
she offered. I thought you were calling it off.
I am,
she agreed.
So let's make the last time special.
All right, grab your coat.
Huh?
I want more than just come to bed, Duck. It's been a nice day out. Let's use it. Bemused, Ava put her coat back on, and he took her hand. It wasn't a lavish date. At the best of times, Sean barely had enough money coming in to keep on top of his bills, council tax, and student fees. Meaning that any romantic notions of paying for expensive romantic moments like horse-drawn carriage rides in the park or whatever were out. Mostly they walked, held hands, talked, and just enjoyed one another's company. Sean's fitness had improved hugely over the years from daily walks with her. Previously, he would have been sore and tired after a mile. Now, a 3-hour gentle stroll down Archway Road and through Holloway to the city and onto Garden Bridge didn't trouble him at all. Sunset was staining the day's few high clouds a brilliant pink and purple by the time they stood together, looking out over grey waters in Soho, surrounded by the scent and hissing of plants in the breeze.
You're right,
Ava commented after they'd been silent a minute or so.
This is right.
Sean put his arm around her waist. It's going to be hard, you know.
What?
Being just your friend. She looked down at her feet, blinking, then hugged him.
Please try,
she pleaded.
I'd hate to lose you.
You're not losing me, Duck, he promised, stroking her hair. I just said it'd be hard, not that I couldn't do it. She let go again, wiping her cheeks dry.
You're a lot tougher than you look, you know that?
You seem to bring out that quality in people. She didn't answer, just sighed and nuzzled up against him until the sun went down. They caught the tube back, still not saying anything. They just held hands on the walk back to Sean's house. Only once they were inside and the door was locked did Ava break the comfortable silence.
Come to bed.
Sean took her hand, and for the last time she led him upstairs. Date point. 9 years and 5 months after Vancouver. Folktha, Cimbrian, the far reaches. Jessica Olmsted. 3, 2, 1! Cheers erupted as gravity settled on everybody like a comfortable warm coat. Jess and Gabe both shared a sigh of relief. There was just something about low gravity that the human body never quite adapted to. No matter how familiar it became, no matter how good you got at adjusting your preconceptions on how big such a small difference really was, there was just something in the bones and muscles that hankered for good old 9.8 meters per second. The engineers who had installed Folktha's new gravity generator shook hands or exchanged high fives, and then got on with the business of tidying up all of the generator's functional bits into the pedestal of the sculpture that had been selected to house it. It was just a modified warp engine, really, and therefore disarmingly small. Jess could have easily held it in one hand. It could have lived hidden away in any basement or office in Folktha, but public opinion had been that it should be somewhere that they could visit. And so, by far the longest delay in installing it, had been waiting while a sculpture had gone through the process of being commissioned and built, starting with approaching several different artists, then putting the matter to public opinion via Cimbrian's burgeoning colonial internet. The winning design was equal parts sculpture and water feature, an angular slate funnel named Well, that echoed both the artificial gravity well that it would house and also a source of water, for which purpose it caught the predictable nightly Cimbrian rains and allowed the very gravity it was generating to draw the rainwater through a filter, dispensing it via drinking fountain. It now formed the centerpiece of New World Plaza. What had once been just a field amidst the temporary buildings of the early Folktha colony was now a brick-paved area with flower beds and market stalls that sold everything from clothing and blankets, books to hyper-modern gizmos like stasis fridges, solar-powered drone quadcopters, and holographic TVs. There was even an e-tattoo artist, plus an assortment of missionaries, street preachers, and pamphlet dispensers. Folktha, in short, had grown up. There was nothing left of the frontier huddle of little chalets and dirt roads. Nowadays, everything was paved, the roads designed so that the utilities that ran beneath them could be serviced without disrupting traffic. Nowadays, the buildings were 3, 4, 5 stories tall, and a pale gray that looked white in the height of the day, hung with lights and banners of fiber optic cloth. Nowadays, the Faith Center was just the first of many. The original Folktha Medical Center was now dwarfed by the Sarah Tisdale Memorial Hospital. Delaney Row was a wide avenue lined with young silver birch trees and full of government buildings. Everything was inspired by the alien palace that had once stood at the top of the hill, now rebuilt and a permanent home to the Thing. Its looping geometric lines and rounded rooms had come to define Cimbrian architecture. Nobody seemed to mind that it was originally Kortai architecture. The opportunity to riff on alien themes had been too good to pass up, and in many ways the coldly mathematical underpinnings of the original owner's vision had been hugely exceeded and approved upon. And now, finally, they were under Earth gravity again.
You okay?
Jess asked Gabe. He squeezed her hand. Despite his improving fitness, she never did quite manage to not worry about him. She knew he found it mostly endearing, but she'd rather irritate him sometimes than miss a moment when he genuinely needed help. He was good about admitting to those when they came along.
That actually feels better, he told her quietly.
Are you sure?
Mm-hmm, he nodded. Chief? Cimbrian Colonial Security was Gabe's success story, a modern, trim, and professional police force whose high-vis yellow jackets were a familiar sight patrolling the city in pairs on foot, on bicycles, and in sturdy electric SUVs. Gabe had admitted in private that he would have preferred they be armed, but Folktha was, after all, a British colony, and the citizens had largely expressed a preference that their police force not be armed during their normal duties, reserving the firepower only for when it was needed.
Yes, Hugh. Bit of a disturbance down in the alien quarter, sir.
Jess gave his hand a squeeze, kissed his cheek, and pointed a thumb towards home with a wry smile.
I'll see you later, Chief, she promised.
Gabe gave her a grateful smile and limped alongside Bailey towards the waiting CCS SUV. Jess took in the dispersing crowd and then headed for home. She had to politely navigate a gauntlet of parents wanting to discuss their child with her. Despite the known detrimental effects of low gravity on a child's growth and development, enough families had stuck it out, making do with trusting the small gravity generator that hummed gently to itself under Jess's desk and the ones in Jim's to make up the difference. It wasn't entirely clear if that trust was well-founded. None of the kids seemed to have anything wrong with them, but they were all growing up tall. Whatever the truth, the concerns had been enough to discourage anybody from trying to raise infants and toddlers in Folktha. Ever since the Tisdales had gone back to Earth, every new conception had been grounds for slight communal sorrow, knowing that one of their neighbors was leaving for however many years. Hopefully, the gravity generator would change that. It would certainly save Jess's job. If the current generation had finished growing up and no new youth had come along to replace them, the school would have been completely redundant. Now, though, there was hope that some of those young parents might return, and that Folktha could move on with the business of becoming a real, permanent place for families. All in all, the future was looking bright. Date point: 9 years and 6 months after Vancouver, London, England, Earth. Ava Rios.
So, between your online portfolio and your material already being used by CORD, you've popped up on our radar as somebody to watch. Would you mind?
Is this guy bothering you, baby?
The guy in the suit damn near swallowed his tongue when he turned around and came face to face with Adam.
Adam!
Ava had learned not to throw herself too hard into hugging him nowadays. It was an awful lot like shoulder barging a wall. Still, it was difficult to resist.
Oh my God, I didn't think you had any leave left.
Just 2 days, Adam agreed. So I've got a flight to catch in 10 hours, but come on, I wasn't going to miss your graduation.
She gave him a huge kiss.
Did you see the speech?
Yep, on the screen in the lecture hall upstairs. Saw you getting your scroll too, he beamed. Who's this guy?
Oh, Levon Thomas. This is my boyfriend Adam. Staff Sergeant Aries, I believe.
Tomas shook Adam's hand, regaining his composure.
Yeah, how'd you know?
I've got a working relationship with your father, Mr. Thomas revealed. He's such a pleasure to work with.
Ah, you're the Byron guy, Adam nodded. You offering Ava a job?
Levon managed a smile that was microscopically less confident than usual.
Well, I was just getting to that,
he confirmed. Ava inclined her head with a go-ahead smile, and Levon cleared his throat and handed her a card.
My contact details, he declared. Please, call me whenever you're next on Cimbrian, and I'll be happy to pencil you in for a little chat. I'll be glad to,
Ava agreed. shaking his hand before slipping the card into her handbag. "Damn," Adam commented, watching Tomas leave.
What?
"Nothing. I'm just not used to guys like him."
You mean you're so used to drowning in testosterone you forgot that camp dudes exist?
Ava teased and grinned all the more when a blush darkened his face.
So, oh my God, you've got 2 days leave and you flew over here just to see me? And you're going to have to fly straight back out again?
"Is that okay?"
You didn't have to, Beefstock. She kissed him. But I really appreciate it.
"And look at you, getting job offers from the Byron Group," Adam retorted and gave her an affectionate one-armed squeeze.
"Oh!" Ava pointed and raised her voice. "Sean!"
To his credit, Sean apparently had genuinely not noticed them, and to his even greater credit, upon spotting Adam, he didn't show any sign of nerves or steeling himself. He just excused himself from his current conversation and trotted over. "Hey!" He greeted her as they shared a chaste cheek kiss. "Congratulations on the first." "So, you're Sean!" Adam stuck out a hand. "Heard a lot about you." "All good, I hope." Sean winced a little at Adam's grip, but kept his dignity on pure height. He was nearly half a foot taller than Adam, and while he easily lost out on mass, he won back in altitude. "So good it'd almost make a guy jealous," Adam boomed and gave him a friendly, very gentle knuckle to the upper arm. "We'll have to have a drink sometime, you and me." "Yeah?" "Dude, you're Ava's best friend. That means you're automatically like one of my favorite people." Ava hid a smile behind her hand and mouthed the words, "He is such a puppy," at Sean. Sean laughed and genuinely relaxed for the first time in weeks. "A drink it is, then." "So, what are you up to now that you're a graduate?" Adam asked him. "Oh, my uncle's an investigative journalist," Sean revealed. "I've always wanted to do what he does, and he promised to take me under his wing so long as I did well on my course." "Did you?" "Well enough." Sean looked forgivably pleased with himself. "Mostly I'm going to be carrying the bags and managing the phone numbers, but it's all good experience." "You're getting paid, right?" "Please, I wouldn't do an unpaid internship if you paid me," Sean joked. Adam chuckled. "I knew I'd like you," he said. Ava tapped him on the arm.
"We need to go do the cap toss and turn the caps and gowns back in. Are you okay waiting here?" she asked.
"I'll be over there, under the aircon." Adam pointed to an out-of-the-way corner.
"Okay."
She gave him a slight kiss and tilted her head toward the doors, looking at Sean.
"Shall we?"
Sean nodded. "Good to meet you, Adam." "You too, buddy. Take care." Ava made sure the door was closed before asking him.
"So, what do you think?"
"You could do a lot worse, Duck," Sean told her.
"You think so?"
"Look," Sean stopped. "It's obvious you two just light up around each other. I get it. It's the Ava and Adam show, and I'm happy for you. He really does seem like a great guy."
"I hear a but in there."
He seems so earnest, doesn't he?" Sean chewed on a bit of loose skin on his lower lip as he thought. "I have this feeling like he's the kind of guy who makes a plan and sticks to it, and maybe doesn't think through the consequences of that plan so very well."
"Whatever gave you that idea?"
Ava drawled. Sean chuckled, but quickly became serious again. "Just be certain that he knows who you are and you know who he is, okay?" he pleaded with her. "Don't rush in now that you're on the last leg and fall at the final hurdle."
"I think you're mixing metaphors there."
"Ava." She held up a peaceful hand.
I hear you, and I promise I will. I want to be happy with him, after all."
"And if you can't be?"
"Sean."
She glanced back to make absolutely certain that there was no sign at all of Adam, then stole a last and tender kiss with him.
"I know somebody else who'd make me just as happy."
"The only difference is he needs you more."
"He does,"
she agreed. "All right," he nodded. "Let's go do that photo and get rid of these things, and then you can go be a hero." They followed the shouting and gestures out onto the steps in front of the building, lined up as directed by the photographer, and unpinned their caps, ready to throw. The countdown started, and Ava couldn't resist one last gesture. Just before they threw their caps into the air, she took Sean's hand. Date point, 9 years and 7 months after Vancouver. London, England, Earth. Charlotte Gilroy.
"Gosh, we really don't have a lot of stuff, do we?"
They really didn't. Ben had sold off his course textbooks now that he no longer needed them, and between them their clothes and assorted possessions, carefully packed, worked out to 2 suitcases each and a half-dozen cardboard boxes.
"It's just settling in, isn't it?" Ben asked. "We're graduates."
"Yeah, grown, responsible adults." Charlotte laughed nervously and raised a fist to face height with a scared smile. Go us! Ben blinked at her, then put down the box he'd been carrying and rubbed her arms.
Are you okay?
I don't know where we're going or what we're doing, Charlotte told him. We kept forgetting to talk about it. Are we going up north or over to Southampton or...
Oh! Ben turned and dug through the box he'd just set down.
I had an idea there, actually.
You did?
Yep, he replied. Bear with... Here it is. He handed her the kind of slim pamphlet so beloved of tourist attractions and the enthusiastically religious. She frowned at it.
Folktha?
Look, see? Ben tapped the page, and his tattoos, with their usual immaculate sense of timing, chose that moment to animate the moon changing phases as it orbited the Earth.
They finished installing this big city-wide gravity generator last month, which means the whole of Folktha is constantly under Earth gravity now.
I don't know. I mean, it would be nice to be close to Ava, but do we have any skills they're going to want?
Well, I'm a civil engineering graduate and you're a midwife, Ben pointed out. Now, they're building new structures and roads and stuff all the time out there. But more importantly, before that gravity generator was built, nobody in Folktha could have babies because of the low gravity being bad for child development.
Charlotte blinked at him, then at the pamphlet.
But now it's turned on, they're going to need midwives.
Sounds like a plan, he asked.
It sounds like an excellent plan.
Well, there's one more part to it.
What?
Ben was already on one knee, and Charlotte's hands flew involuntarily to her mouth.
I love you, Charlotte. Will you marry me?
The word yes needed a full 2 minutes to finally find its way out of her. Fortunately, she remembered how to nod long before then, and by the time it arrived, she was already wearing the ring he'd sold his textbooks to buy. All right, guys. That's going to be it for this one today. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you. If you wouldn't mind going down, giving it a like, comment, and subscribe. Also, if you really want to, click the Patreon link in the description. Lots of cool stuff going on over there. A lot more early access stuff. I'm giving out early access stuff on the channel, or on the Patreon, regularly. Usually at least 2 a week. Sometimes a little bit more. It just depends on the amount that I get backlogged. For today, what is the color of the wind? What is the sound of one hand clapping? If a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it, does it make a sound? Anyway, guys, I will talk to you in the next one.
Bye, y'all!